So I've come down to South London to talk to Reg, and Reg has got a lovely house here. He's bought this new build house. He thought it was a lovely house, didn't you?
Low maintenance, that's why I bought it. Low maintenance. A new house, low maintenance, that was it. Yeah.
So you fed up with doing up old places and you thought, nice new house.
Indeed.
What can possibly go wrong?
Indeed, what could go wrong?
And what did go wrong?
I should have realised that there were problems at the beginning because I had lots of little teething problems. The real problem, and the reason for all this, the roof was not in a good state. There's actually 4 roofs. There's 3 pitched roofs and then a flat roof between. There's sort of slab roofs. There's no attics.
Yeah.
The size of that lead is the depth of the roof. It took me 3 years before I realised that there was a significant problem with it, which was the staining of the soffits. There was, which implied that there was a leak in the box gutters. And I assumed that it was the downpipes. So I called them back, then got the scaffolders back, and then got the roofers back. Everything built up over a series of weeks and months before we were able to get the faces off and actually see inside to see what was happening. It wasn't the downpipes leaking. It was that the roof had no insulation in it whatsoever. Lots of insulation, no ventilation.
Got it.
Because you think that you want the insulation sounds good, put lots of insulation in because it does good and keeps the warmth in it. It's a bit more complicated than that. You need it to be ventilated, and it wasn't ventilated, so it was everything was condensing. Water was running down obviously downhill and running down the outside of the downpipes. All the water that was the rainwater on the outside was operating as it should have, which is running down into the box gutters and down the downpipes. They weren't
leaking at all?
No, they weren't leaking at all, no.
Yeah.
That was on the inside,
So inside that roof you had some kind of silver foil insulation, what we call PIR or PUR?
That's right, that's right.
Kingspan sellotape.
And there were 2 layers of that, so it was a substantial, so it was a well-insulated house. So
just on the cold side of that insulation, because this will be a cold roof from what you're telling me, this is a cold roof, and that means you've got to ventilate the top of it. You've got 50 mil, at least a 50 mil airspace above the insulation, and you need a through draft. Well, I would have thought there was no problem with having a through draft on that because you've got a lovely pitch. I mean, sometimes when you do that on a flat roof, you get problems because you don't get sufficient airflow across it. But in this case, when you've got something high and something low, you've got the wind hitting it, it should ventilate perfectly. So what was the problem there? It
had no air gap of any sort. It had lots of insulation, so it was keeping the warmth in, but there was no airflow anywhere. As you'll see later, they've now built in proper airflow over the top of that.
So what was the extent of the damage? You say it was running down the outside, so when they peeled it off, what did they actually find?
When we took the soffits off and took the fascias that you can see replaced there now, when we took those off, the plywood, the sheathing and the joists themselves, I would never have believed that in 4 years something could rot quite as extensively as it had. You could literally get hold of the timber and shred it in your hands and sort of wring it out like a mop.
And I'm assuming this was pressure treated timber.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that as well, but who was responsible?
Because there's inspections that take place. The building inspectors must have looked at it.
It was only at that point that I tried to find the drawings for the roof construction. I've got drawings for the building construction, the frame construction, the foundations, all those sorts of things, and then a very loose sketch, really, of what the roof construction is, but there's no cross-section drawings that I could find. Lewisham Council, which had approved all this, had no drawings. The architect had disappeared, and the developer from whom I bought it 4 or 5 years after finishing and selling it to me conveniently disappeared. And it was no longer his responsibility because that's why he'd taken out insurance. All the people involved in building the house, including the people giving the warranty, all of them must have seen that there wasn't any ventilation. There were no vents, there were no mushrooms, and nobody appears to have seen that. There should be adequate airflow through there now.
I would guess that they've put some mushrooms up there.
They've got mushrooms, we've got under the soffits there, you can see both of them. And then, as you say, channels which channel the air over and down. Thankfully, the new build warranty covered it all for defective building. Each one of the 3 companies that came to do tenders, when I talked to them about my shock at the degree of damage, each one of them said that the majority of their work now is remedial work on new builds. Partly that's because of the new materials that builders are using that they're not familiar with. And I suspect that the approvals are not really done very thoroughly now, I think. I think they might be done remotely. But this is week 26 now of a 15-week estimate. The tin hat has just come off.
Yeah.
Most of the rebuild has been done. It's got a new waterproof system on top. What was on originally was a rubber membrane.
Yeah.
That all had to be torn off, as did all the plywood and chipboard that was supporting it. And then the rotten joist had to be cut out. No, I had to give up my office because the roofers are immediately above your head, and there's no way that you're able to work up there. So the fantastic inconvenience. So even though it's covered by warranty, I'm very angry about it. But the end is in sight, as you can see. It's been resurfaced with a new material that is like a rubberized paint. It's called Triflex. By its name, you would think it was 3 layers, but it's not. But it's not. It's actually 2 layers. It's a mesh. Triflex is then painted onto it. That forms a waterproof seal. So that replaces the rubber membrane that was there, and it's covered all the pitched roofs, obviously, and up the sides. But it's also gone around the box gutters at the bottom. The other issue about these particular roofs is that the 3 pitched roofs had the rubber membrane on them, and then sedum planters on top of those. So it's a green roof. Then there's solar panels on the south-facing roof. Originally, they were just wooden battens, and they were attached through the membrane. It wasn't leaking though, which is interesting. But now they've put proper brackets on, and it looks. Maybe we'll see it when we go up there.
We'll go and have a look at it. I'm itching to get up there and have a look at it. So here we are on the level above, and blimey, you've got yourself a swimming pool up here.
Indeed.
Oh, goodness.
And that shows the problem. This is a box gutter. There's the outlet downpipe there. And at this end, this is, what's this, 1.5 inches deep?
Yeah.
And that's meant to just evaporate, you know?
Yeah. Just get some fish, mate, that's all you need.
Koi carp.
Koi carp in there.
Yeah. I dread to think how much this has cost to do this. I mean, it's mind-boggling amount of money. It's got to be way into the, the 6 figures, isn't it?
Well, even to get the guys down to look at it, by the time they've all whacked their fees in for coming down and just walking around and writing a report and so on, you're not going to get the change out of a couple of £1,000 for the report, and then it goes on, doesn't it? Scaffolding.
Sadly, you can't see the tin hat that was here until yesterday, and the shrouding that was here until last week. But you can see the superstructure here, and that took 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks to put it up. So goodness knows how much that's cost. And it's here this week 26 now. So if you look up there.
Oh yeah, see a couple of mushrooms.
There's mushrooms at the top there, but under here, there's continuous
off the bed,
along the top there,
Yeah, which is exactly what you need. So he's put some grey on there.
That's because we had to drill through in order to fix the brackets. So the dark grey there is a sealant for that particular sort of purpose to attach to the metal.
How do the planters stay on the roof then? What stops them sliding down into the gutter?
Apparently, they're going to, what was on originally was that there were horizontal aluminium brackets holding the planters in place. The planters are about 2 foot square each, and they just slot together. And at 3 or 4 different points, there was a horizontal bracket holding them in place that was glued to the.
Oh, was it just glued to the membrane?
Yeah.
Blimey.
So on the inside, this is the flat roof area that we saw outside. So on the inside of that, you can see here the damage where the screws attaching
popped.
Popped. So that's the extent of the damage, which is not really, which is actually incredibly surprising. Some of the lights were pushed out by, inadvertently pushed out, but they just popped them back in again.
So you've got pitched roof there, and that's one of those roof windows, looking nice. Should have been, could have been, would have been a lovely house.